The Sonoff NSPanel Pro Smart Home Control Panel. Is it worth having? How hard is it to install? Will it work with my other smart home devices? Can I use it offline? We'll get to the answers to all of these questions momentarily. Before that, I want to make sure you know something. I was not paid or coerced in any way to give this product a positive review. Sonoff did send me the device for free with a request that I test and review it, but nothing more. I will never give anything other than my honest observations or indisputable facts. To knowingly omit or blatantly lie about any detail, for money or otherwise, would be unethical. So everything in this video will be what I observe or how I honestly feel about it. Okay, let's take a look at this thing. As with the other NS panels and many other Sonoff products, I think the NSPanel Pro looks slick. I don't mind the buttons on the NS panel, but I'm equally fond of the larger screen without them. Also, like the other NS panels, the Pro's panel and mount and the rear circuitry housing are quite substantial. Unlike the NSPanel Pro's kith and kin, you don't get any relays, just the panel. I sort of understand this, but if you're installing this in a place where a light switch used to be, which I feel is a vast majority of the time, it would be nice to have at least one relay, especially since this housing is fairly large for the utility box, so packing a different relay module behind it with all the wires does not seem easy, if possible at all. Now, that's not something I'm actually going to hold against it too much, and you'll see why a bit later. Also, since there's no relay, you don't need to worry about hooking in anything but a hot and a neutral. The panel separates from the mount just like the other Sonoff panels and touch switches, then it's as easy as any switch or outlet to mount in place. Snap the screen back on and you're done with installation. That's not so bad. But let's power on the device and see how pairing and operation go. This isn't really all that important to this review, but one of the absolutely trivial things I like about these panels is the splash screen. The NS panel shows the Sonoff logo, but the NSPanel Pro shows not only the Sonoff logo, but also whatever Rubik is. If I had to guess, I would say they wrote the firmware or at least helped with it. Anyway, first boot takes a bit longer than subsequent ones, and then you're met with this welcome screen. When you're ready to start, just tap Start. It asks you for your language and then your region. Scrolling is touch and go. See what I did there? And that actually did get on my nerves a bit. Also, I noticed immediately that the screen isn't as responsive as the non-Pro NS panels. It seems like you have to be a bit more purposeful about tapping or swiping, and even then it feels a bit laggy. The lag might be fixable in a later firmware update, but I'm not sure about the slightly more masochistic touchscreen. This stuff is minor, but noticeable. I didn't notice it nearly as much after setup because the amount of taps and swipes is less for normal operation for the most part. The on-screen keyboard is as good as you might expect from any screen of this size, though the jab-to-tap requirement still holds at times. Next, it's time to select a Wi-Fi network. During this initial setup and testing, I put it on a network with internet, but I did take it offline to see what still worked and which devices it would still talk to. After all, they're all on the same network, so it shouldn't make any difference, right? But we'll take a look at that in a bit. The next part wasn't readily apparent, but it's in the user manual, which I didn't bother to read. In the pull-down menu under Settings, there's an option labeled eWe Link Account. Yeah, I figured out how it's supposed to be pronounced. That will generate a QR code you can then scan by tapping Add Device in the app and selecting Scan. Then you scan it. Connection happens pretty quick, and now you can access the NSPanel Pro from the app. If you don't mind the app situation, it's a pretty smooth process. Now, when you choose the NSPanel Pro in the app, it gives you a little tour of two of the buttons. A lot of the user interface is clunky and feels like it's perpetually under construction, like a lot of other Sonoff stuff, but I have a lot of unfinished stuff too. I'm not an electronics manufacturer, but it's still good to know that I'm not alone. Even with the clunky stuff, there are some really neat features to this thing. You can set various tile pattern layouts, which you'll find under Themes, and if you want to change the background, you'll find that under Themes as well, but on the device, not the app. This is weird, and it shows how disconnected the firmware and app development really are, but it works well enough for what it is, so I won't be too mad at it. You can add widgets, which is buried in the app settings. This puts buttons on a page that you can swipe to. There's another page you can swipe to that puts this device over the line into use on my main system. Web pages. Web pages have to be added in the app, and it won't let you unless you're online, but once the button is there, it works online or offline. If the address isn't local, of course it won't load. That brings me to the last test I did, which I also alluded to in the video on the TX Ultimate. I took the device offline to see what would happen. Well, it kept the time and date, which is expected, but I'm certain the weather will now permanently be what it said when I took it offline. The web pages, as I mentioned, still work, and that's super useful for things like Home Assistant or any other web-accessible thing you might want to integrate. I will say the device is obviously suffering for memory, as nothing about loading a web page is fast. In fact, it's almost 90s residential internet slow, but there are ways around that by using simple proxy interfaces, something I'll cover in another video. Something else this device is capable of being is a Zigbee gateway. You may have noticed it on the app screen. The following fact has actually made me want more Zigbee devices, though I still wouldn't have pursued this setup had it not been sent to me. If you add a Zigbee device to the NS panel and add a widget to that device before taking the panel offline, when you tap on the widget, it works offline. If you tap any device not connected directly to the NSPanel Pro while it's offline, it won't work. If you tap the like button on this video, YouTube will work and show my videos to more people, but that's not really a Sonoff feature. I wanted to really push to get offline control working on devices not directly connected to the panel, but on the same Wi-Fi network. Just taking the internet away made the TX and the app mad at me. So I thought I might reset the TX and pair it while I was on a network not connected to the internet. This too upset the fragile sensibilities of these devices, and the TX refused to be paired in this way. I decided it was time to get tricky and paired the device using my mobile hotspot, named the same as one of my Shelly Blue gateways, mostly because it was handy, while it was unplugged. Then I shut off my mobile hotspot and powered the Shelly Blue gateway back up. This did not work at all. The TX was having none of it. The device directly connected to Zigbee still worked, but that's it. And you can only pair 8 devices in this way. I do wonder if I could pair another gateway to branch that out, and I'm almost certain you could, but not curious enough to burn the money. But back to the NSPanel Pro and the TX Ultimate situation. Some Sonoff devices will let you put them into a local DIY mode, but neither of these devices has that capability. I want to speak plainly what is going on here and let you draw your own conclusions. The NSPanel Pro, which knows about the TX Ultimate and is on the same Wi-Fi network, will not control it without being on the internet. Let me just run that again. You cannot remotely control a light switch relay from another device that is specifically designed to control it unless you are connected to the internet. Seems kind of weird, doesn't it? Okay, I have one more thing to show you that I really do like about the NSPanel Pro. You can add RTSP or ESP32 cameras. This also works offline, which I really like. I'm guessing this is because it's an RTSP stream, and detecting if the camera is a Sonoff and if it's online or not is probably more hassle than what it's worth, especially since all the other devices will shut you down if you make the grave error of assuming that what you buy belongs to you, or that your remote light switch shouldn't need the internet. So, time to summarize and give this thing a final grade. Sturdy, good-looking, substantial, and easy to install. These seem to be easy marks for Sonoff. Setup, if you don't mind the app, is quick and mostly straightforward, even if you have to poke through a couple menus to get to the pairing QR code. Performance could definitely be better when it comes to touch response and web page loading times, but it is what it is. You can sort of use it to control devices offline if they're Zigbee and directly paired to the NS panel or chained to it, I think, so it gets some credit for this since little else Sonoff seems to make it that far. The camera and web page features have to be the greatest aspects in the NSPanel Pro's favor, and they're extremely valuable in my opinion, and I can do all kinds of things with my various servers, cameras, and Home Assistant thanks to these features. Final grade? I hate the partial offline control limitation. Scrolling any distance or making more than 2 gestures in a row is a bit anxiety-inducing. Even with those drawbacks, I'm still going to say this is the first Sonoff device that gets an A. This is because I can work around almost any limitation with the mini browser capability anyway. I don't care about much else. I've replaced my regular NS panel on my nightstand with this one. That's why it's in this enclosure. I only have one of these, but I have 2 other NS panels that needed stands. The NS panel that was on my nightstand is now on my wife's, and it controls her bedside lamp. How did I set that up without another Sonoff enclosure or cutting into the nightstand? Well, I designed and printed a thing. This thing. I have another one of these things for the first NS panel I bought and flashed with Tasmota. If you've enjoyed this video, I hope you'll consider subscribing. I do more than just product reviews, I just happen to be buried in them at the moment. I also try to build my own devices and occasionally rant about automation or security. While I'm at it, I'd like to thank my members, the indestructible Darko664, the immutable Claptrap, the impermeable Source Boniface, and the incorruptible Montana Flyer. If you'd like to be I-something-ible too, you can join the channel as a member for as little as $3 a month, and you'll get early, extended, and exclusive extras. All the E's can be yours. To everyone watching, I sincerely appreciate you giving me some of your minutes, and I do hope you'll join me for future videos as I continue exploring smarter circuits.